NPP or CPP or PNC. And that will show that he's really determined to deal with corruption.
Let's talk about Mr. Martin Amidu, who is now tasked with getting to the bottom of this matter. Some other persons in the anti-corruption space have said that because of his lack of resources, which he himself has complained about in the past, it may take too long for us to get to the bottom of this.
Yes, I agree with that, especially the fact that there are some cases that are before him and we are not hearing anything about them. And investigations like this, they don't take just one day. It may even involve traveling outside the country to consult his colleagues in the UK. And so if he doesn't have the resources, definitely it will cripple him. And then I heard somebody also saying that Parliament should investigate. These are just duplication of efforts and waste of resources. If this president has already instructed somebody to investigate, a state institution to investigate, there will be no need for another institution to go in.
Right. So your position then is that Martin Amidu may not deal with this as swiftly as we want as Ghanaians?
Well, that's my suspicion, that he may not be able to do that.
Mr. Azim, let's talk about the merit of the case. Now, I'm going to read a part of this which we've gone over and a number of times in this show. The fact that a number of Airbus employees made or promised success-based commission payments of approximately 5 million euros to Intermediary 5. False documentation was created by or with the agreement of Airbus employees in order to support and disguise these payments. It shows here that corruption as we know it is evolving and is becoming more difficult to spot. In fact, a number of persons called into the show and said that, look, these were commission payments. We can't say it's corruption. Are we learning fast enough about these cases?
You see, that is the confusion about the judgment. One, you talk about commission payments and you talk about bribes. The thing is that Airbus would have a policy of commission payments. But then it also has to influence the purchase of the Airbuses. The aim was to influence. It's not like you sold the thing and you're asking for commission. So it sort of confuses the issues. Then it does not even mention any single person's name. Just employees. So what happens to those employees that were involved in this thing? Are they going to go free, or there's going to be another trial of those employees that were involved? So the judgment for us as lay people, I'm not a lawyer, it's a bit confusing. Commission or a bribe. The aim is to solicit some advantage, which is not compensation. Commission is normally a specified amount that they would pay to people that take up any negotiations for and the transaction to take place. And in this case, they found out that the intermediary who had a relationship with the government official won. That is where the conflict of interest comes in. Apart from the fact that it may not be within the percentage of commission that they normally would, Airbus would normally give to people that get involved in the transactions like that.
So you are of the opinion that, or of the position that, as long as they paid the money because they wanted some favor from this government official, even though it stands as a commission, this is a bribe.
I am saying that it may even go beyond the percentage of commission that Airbus normally pays. We don't know. But they have said why they are treating it not just as a commission, but as a bribe. Because the fellow said, I am related to this person. If I get it, I'm going to be able to influence this person to give you to do the purchase.
Right.
So the fellow is using a position to advantage, personal gain, which is the definition of corruption.
How should this, Mr. Azim, change the way we consider the way business dealings are done here at home? Because some argue that if this had happened in Ghana, because of the nature of the documentation, we would have simply let it go, would have said that this is not corruption.
Yes, so our laws, we have laws. Some of them are not very clear on these issues. So we need to revise those aspects of the laws that will make it very clear what is corruption. And people have been advocating for the amendment of the criminal code to clearly define corruption, such that when it happens, there will be no. It will be clear what is involved. But the good thing is that foreign countries are taking up these things that should benefit us, and so we should take advantage of that. And where we even have information about these things, we can report them to these foreign countries to help us. That will discourage other people from engaging in such acts in the future. They will help us to save money. They will help us to get value for money for our procurement. Because most of these big procurements are not, they are not transacted in Ghana. We don't have somebody manufacturing an aircraft. We don't have even cars. We don't have, maybe Katinka. So, and we buy these things from outside. Even sometimes we may have certain things in Ghana, but we'll still go out to buy them because of the 5% or the 10%. So if the foreign countries are able to apply their laws, it would help us as a country.
Right. What does this say then, Mr. Azim, about parliamentary scrutiny, away from the issue of the reform of our laws? But what does this say about parliamentary scrutiny? We've now seen Hansard from 2011, where this issue was being debated in Parliament, and the minority at the time had questions about the discrepancies in payments, how much we're paying for these jets. How can we cure this going forward?
You see, Parliament's oversight is compromised by its composition in Parliament, in the House. You always have the executive having the majority in Parliament. Some of them, or most of them, are ministers of state. Some of them sit at cabinet meetings and take decisions and then come follow up to Parliament to vote. And most of our parliamentarians don't consider the national interest when it comes to voting. Once it is brought by their government, they will vote in favor. That is very unfortunate. And it's so difficult because of the benefits attached to such relationships. It's very difficult for us to amend the law such that ministers will not be chosen from Parliament. No parliamentarian will vote for such a thing, such a drastic change because of the benefits that they derive from it. So I don't know how to say, but maybe in future when we have people that can go forward and say, look, let's amend this law. We don't need parliamentarians in the House, as ministers, or at least reduce the number to a certain level so that they don't have that majority power to always take these decisions. Otherwise, they fail in doing their work. And yesterday, I was surprised. I heard the majority leader saying that he was asked to join a committee to travel. He didn't know what it was about. He was on the plane that they gave him the document to look at. And he just joined without asking the necessary questions. It looks a bit funny.
It's also the case that when this first came to Parliament, the motion to approve the loan agreements for 60 million euros to purchase these C-295 military aircraft, the committee didn't even have the report. Some members of the committee had not seen the report, and so they decided to go on and consider the Embraer aircraft, the E190s, not the C-295. So the point you make about parliamentary capacity is very well in order. But then again, some persons by inference have begun naming the former President John Mahama as a government official one and as individual one, being an anti-corruption crusader. Is this in order for us to make these inferences and say, look, this person is the only one who could have been an elected official in this position?
Well, I think it's still speculation because of two things. One, when an intermediary goes to say, look, I am close to this person, give me this amount of money, I'll go and give it, you don't follow to know whether the fellow is actually giving the money to the person or not. The person could have just taken the money and pocketed it, knowing that maybe with insider information, knowing that the decision has already been taken to buy those aircrafts from Airbus. That is one. The other thing is that the president has already instructed the Office of Special Prosecutor to investigate this matter. Why are we putting the donkey before the cart? We should just exercise patience to see what will happen. Because, you see, government official one, maybe he's the highest, at the time he was the highest government official. But it even started during Atamir's time. 2 acres were bought during Atamir's time. Then the last one was bought in Mahama's time.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we just attaching to Mahama because he's a presidential candidate, or why? Why are we rushing to draw that conclusion?
So does he have
a brother? Does he have a brother who was born in the UK and all that? We need to check all those issues. I don't know about his personal life, but certain issues should point to the person, and so we need to go back into that. And I think that's what the Office of Special Prosecutor would be trying to find out.
Right. So it's simply that on page 260 of Mr. Mohammed's book, My First Coup d'etat, he does describe his brother Samuel as someone who was taken to the UK when he was very young. And then there are other references, according to the NPP, scattered references which suggest that this brother was reunited with Mr. Mahama sometime in the 1990s. And so they claim that it fits the description. But of course, in this case where you mention that we don't know if the money actually got to Mr. Mahama or whoever this government official may be, what do you make then of the fact that a close relative of a government official acts as an agent or a business partner for Airbus? What does this mean for issues of conflict of interest and also just fair business?
Well, the judgment shows that when Airbus realized that there was a relationship, they terminated that arrangement. But they didn't exactly
terminate it. Just on a factual point, they didn't exactly terminate it. What they did is that they hired another intermediary to pay them the money, for them to forward the money to this business partner. So they actually hid this relationship. They didn't terminate it.
Well, they didn't want to use that relationship. They changed a new person. Only that new group also connived with the first person to still get the transaction through. That's my understanding of what I read. But whatever the case, it is definitely not right for somebody, because of your relationship with maybe an elected official, to use that position to your advantage. It's conflict of interest, and so it should not happen. In fact, you are elected as president or minister or whatever, member of parliament. It's not your wife or your brothers that are elected. And as much as possible, and even to keep the integrity of the family, you shouldn't be interfering with the work of the elected official. But we do it in this country, which is unfortunate.
Mr. Vitus Azim, thank you very much for joining us this morning on the Super Morning Show. He's an anti-corruption campaigner. He's also the former executive director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Now, being a former ED of GII, it's no surprise that he began by saying that this reflects what we've been talking about in the Corruption Perception Index. He, however, says that it's good the president has taken action quickly in referring this matter to the special prosecutor, though he expects that the president will also take swift action in referring other cases of corruption which involve members of his alleged cases of corruption, which involve members of his administration to the appropriate authorities. He ended just here by saying that it's not necessary for us to say it's Mr. Mahama or it's this person. Let's wait for the special prosecutor to do his job. And there was really no need for a family member of this government official to take such a critical role, to play such a critical role in this business transaction. Mr. Okujeto Ablakwa, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa, is still with us in studio. And Mr. Okujeto Ablakwa, where Mr. Azim ended is really the nail in the coffin, right? Because in the end, a government official did business with his brother, and he acted through him to contact Airbus. And that's where the problem is, no?
It is important to emphasize that this record-breaking fine that Airbus SE has had to pay, 3.6 billion euros.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge in the case says that even if you add all the fines paid in 2018 in England and Wales, it comes nowhere near this figure. And it's the highest ever fine paid. It tells you that fundamentally there was something wrong within the corporate entity Airbus SE. And I think that we should focus discussion on the conduct of multinationals, how they set up slush funds to influence decisions, to induce, to scout for personalities who could win them favors, who could open doors that they do not deserve, who could give them an advantage. Remember that if you go to the background of this case, Boeing had raised concerns about the practices of their competitor Airbus SE. And you notice that the conduct of Airbus SE was very consistent in all the countries they had operated. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the UK SFO was not the only entity looking at Airbus SE.
No, it wasn't.
In 5 countries. That's Ghana, Taiwan, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, and Ghana, Taiwan, Malaysia, the Sri Lanka, and a few other countries. The Americans looked at their conduct in other countries. France also looked at their business operations in other countries, including Colombia, China, and what have you. You notice that it is Airbus that are the perpetrators. And you see, because we are in an election year, and how desperate sometimes political actors want to take political advantage and throw mud at each other, I am saying that, look, let's for once go beyond just this MPP NDC bashing. And not because I think that the NDC has anything to hide. I've already told you that we do not have anything to hide. We welcome this investigation. We know that we'll be vindicated at the end of the day.
Okay.
But let us focus attention on the conduct of these multinationals and begin to put in place measures that will make us stronger, more immune from these very, very, very damaging schemes of these multinationals. And you see, what also worries me, Daniel, is that all of these fines, the 3.6 billion euros, you notice that France, United States of America, and Britain have shared it. It's been paid into their consolidated fund. No care whatsoever for the countries affected. Most of them developing countries. And it's our taxes that paid these companies. And if there has been any inflation or overpayment of these interest or success-based commissions, so you notice that in the case of Ghana, we are told that the payment of the success-based commission exceeded the OECD rules.
Yeah, the threshold.
The threshold of some 3 million euros. The question is the taxpayers' money? Why is it that consistently, throughout history, check anytime they confiscate assets of corrupt politicians in Africa, Sani Abacha and all of them, the West keeps everything. So we should be asking ourselves, how can we also make these companies pay so that we can ensure that these fines can also be invested in the development of our country. So I am saying that there are bigger issues that we must raise. One, the fact that we should take a second look at these multinationals who come pontificating and adopting this public posture as though they are squeaky clean and that they will conduct their business above board and all of that. Because they know that when they are exposed, we will rather be interested in just the petty political point scoring instead of going after them, finding them big as the Western nations have done, so that we can at least retrieve some of our money
and get some repatriation for our country
and develop our country, and also ensure that they are held liable. Why is it that in this whole matter they were held in camera? We don't know the officials who were involved. And you notice from the judgment that on the 28th of January 2020 and again on the 31st of January 2020, the court in Southwark said that they will protect the identities.
Yeah.
Why is that? These are fundamental issues we should raise, because naming and shaming is important. So I am interested in a genuine fight against corruption, instead of just this cheap political point scoring, so that we can change the status quo, really, affect how we have fought corruption all these years. If not, they know that, look, worst case scenario, they'll only be hitting their heads. And then the real culprits, let us not forget that, look, the real culprits in this are the officials of Airbus SE, who, even before they will come and make a presentation to the Ghanaian government, the military, about their products and the military hardware or military capacity that they have to offer, they were rather looking for BPs, they call them business partners, who really, if you look at the role of these business partners, they are looking at your connections, looking at who you are related to, how you can engage in underhand dealings to get them business. So if you have read John Perkins' book, The Confessions of an Economic Hitman, you notice that this has been a long time modus operandi, what he calls the corporatocracy. Big business aligned with the Western powers that be, including intelligence and the executive arm, and this is how they conduct their business. So they come as though they really are here to do just business for a win-win situation, but that is not really what it is. I am saying that, look, let us not allow the cheap MPP NDC partisanship to make us lose sight of the fact that we need to reassess the business operations of these multinationals all over, how they come into our country, how they win contracts, and even their operations. Look at what has happened in the mining sector. Look at the pollution and all of that, and they get away with it.
On that note, Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa, since you mentioned how they do their business, how they conduct about their business, their operations, I just want to make a few factual points on what you were saying before we move to other parts of the story. And I'm going to read from 135 of the District Court of Colombia's findings, and they said that between 2009 and 2016, the individual, one, a citizen of Ghana, was a high-ranking elected official in Ghana. Beginning in around 2009, a few months after he took office, he was in direct and repeated contact with the senior Airbus executives from both Defense and Space Division and SMO International. This suggests clearly that the initial contact was not even made by Airbus, it was made by the government of Ghana. In fact, they say here in the UK document, they say that it was after the expression of interest. Contact between Airbus and the government of Ghana about aircraft sales began in June 2009, following an expression of interest by the government of Ghana. The government of Ghana expressed interest. So it was not the case that Airbus went shopping around and went looking for a business partner. Initially, we had that contact, and then a business partner was introduced into this entire conversation. But I will quickly go onto the phone lines and get the thoughts of Mr. Suleiman Abrahima, who is Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa. Because like Mr. Ablakwa said, sometimes we need to name and shame. Mr. Abrahima has an interesting theory in this regard. Good morning, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Daniel, and good morning to my good friend, Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa.
Hey, good morning, Suleiman.
Yes.
So explain to us again how you arrive at your conclusion on the identity of government official one.
Well, I think that in all this, I certainly agree with the views of Mr. Ablakwa in terms of putting aside MPP, NDC debate and really being serious about the fight against corruption. What I want to say to that is the fact that, well, those of them who have been in government before perhaps are the ones who must help in this matter, because we all continue to talk about the extent to which sometimes contracts are inflated. And even as we know the figures are quite huge, we end up going with those same figures. And at the end of the day, it's the country that loses. I think that our arms are not twisted when we are signing contracts that, you check prices and you realize that these prices are obviously inflated. But having said that, I think in this whole conversation, what is of interest to me is the question about who is that government official one. And I think that there are three things. One, the documents say that this person, apart from being a high government official, is an elected official. Then it gives a timeline between 2009 and 2015. And then, of course, the bit about being a key decision maker when it comes to procurement or acquiring equipment for our military. So if you look at these three issues, then you want to do the analysis in terms of trying to see who possibly could be government official one. And my analysis is that, look, talking about procurement of military hardware or military equipment, you can talk about maybe possibly 3 or 4 people that you would say could possibly be described as being influential in terms of the decision making. And I look at, number one, the Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, that is the President. Number 2 would be the Vice President, who by our Constitution would also be the Chairman of the Ghana Armed Forces Council. And then you can talk about the Defense Minister, who is in charge of our defense setup. And then maybe possibly you can talk about the CDS. But when you put these together, then you go to the second leg of it. So that is to talk about who has influence in terms of being a key decision maker. And these are the 4 people that come to mind. Then the next question is a bit about being an elected official. So you want to look at all these 4 people and find out who amongst them could be described as an elected official. And you look at the period between 2009 and 2015. In 2009, Mills's first defense minister, so if we take the defense ministers, Mills's first defense minister was retired Lieutenant General Henry Smith. And he was not even an MP, for one to even say that, okay, because he was an MP, you could describe him as an elected official. So that technically knocks off the first defense minister under Mills. After Mills, after Henry Smith came, I think it was Ben Kumbo. Mm-hmm. Yes, Ben Kumbo was an MP at that time, so you may say, okay, he was an elected government official, but in looking at him as Minister for Defense, he got that position not by election but by appointment. And therefore, in terms of he being a Minister for Defense, you certainly cannot describe him as, an elected official. Plus, we have to remember, Ben Kumbo did not start as defense minister in 2009. So if the conversation started in 2009, then it couldn't have been Ben Kumbo.
Right.
Then, during the period, we also had Honorable Mark Oyongo, who became an MP only after the 2012 election. So again, if you even say that Oyongo was an elected MP and therefore one could say, could describe him as an elected official, he only got there as an elected official, elected MP and Minister for Defense after 2012. So certainly he couldn't have been there in 2009. So that takes off the defense ministers as the possible culprits in this instance. So when we take them out, then we are technically left with the Commander-in-Chief and then the Vice President, both of whom would rightly be described as elected officials, because the President is certainly elected.
But is the Vice President elected?
And the Vice President is elected. If you look at Article 60, Clause 4 of our Constitution, it says that a person shall be deemed to be duly elected, an emphasis on elected as Vice President, if the person who so designated him to run as his running mate or Vice President is duly elected as President. in accordance with the provisions of Article 1, I think it's Article 163 of the Constitution.
Okay.
So the Constitution says that the Vice President is elected. And so there is no question about that at all. And therefore, the President and the Vice President will be the ones remaining. Now, in terms of mills, if, as in the documents we've all seen, the transaction went on all the way till 2015, and it says this elected government official was in power or in government as of 2015. And we know that President Mills passed on in 2012. So certainly that then could not be reference to President Mills. And therefore, the conclusion that I draw is that if you do these analysis, and I don't know anyone else who could be described as an elected government official and at the same time be a key decision maker when it comes to acquiring aircraft for our military. And remember, as I said, the Vice President then is an elected government official, and of course he's a high-level elected government official. 2, by our Constitution, he chairs the Council of the Armed Forces, and therefore, in terms of making decisions, certainly he's very key, because the part of the job of the Council is to make recommendations to the President in terms of decisions and procurements and so on and so forth in terms of our military. And so for me, my conclusion is that I would say, well, if you do all the analysis, it settles on former Vice President and later President Mahama as the possible person that is referred to as government official 1. Right. But of course, he is still alive, fortunately, and we wish him well and long life. I think it will be proper and great if we can hear from him, if it is something that he knows, and certainly even if he is not government official 1, as referred to in the document, I think that he certainly would be privy to the decision making in terms of the acquisition of those aircraft, and speaking to it would be something that would be great in terms of our efforts to unravel this matter and the general fight against corruption.
Now, Vitus Azim, who is also an anti-corruption campaigner, just mentioned that we have referred this matter for investigation by the special prosecutor. We are putting the carts before the horse if we begin naming and analyzing who government official 1 could be.
No, I think that in terms of trying to analyze who government official 1 could be, I don't think that in any way indicts the process of possible investigations in any way. But having said that, Daniel, I think what should also be of interest is the referral to the office of the special prosecutor. And I say it should be of interest because the special prosecutor is Mr. Martin Amidu.
Right.
And on this matter, I think that it would be right to say that Mr. Martin Amidu himself is quite conflicted. Because between 2009 till January 2012, Mr. Martin Amidu was part of that government. And in fact, at some point between January 2010 and January 2011, Mr. Martin Amidu was our Minister for the Interior. And by our Constitution, he served on the Council of the Ghana Armed Forces. So it will be interesting to find out, does he know about it? I mean, in terms of the procurement, I'm talking about 2010. And before the 2010, if I'm right, I think he served as an advisor in the office of the president.
Right.
So what does he know about it? And then after leaving as Minister for Interior, he became the Attorney General and Minister for Justice. I think in government contracts and in big government procurements involving international bodies, certainly the Attorney General must have some knowledge. And so I based on these, I would say that perhaps Martin himself is conflicted in this matter until perhaps he makes it clear that yes, he was in government at the time, held key positions including being on the Ghana Armed Forces Council, but was not privy to a decision to acquire aircraft for our military. And I think that we need to push that angle for Martin to be clear on that, so that he doesn't commence an investigation that on a matter that he ought to have known or ought to have been privy to, and bring us conclusions that some maybe people would not be clear about how it was conducted and whether his interest played a role in one way or the other.
Suleiman Abrahama, thank you very much for joining us. He is the Media Foundation for West Africa's Executive Director. 2 key points. By his analysis, government official 1 is John Dramani Mahama, former president of the country. Also, he believes that Martin Amidu could be in a position of conflict if he's investigating this matter as special prosecutor, because in the year 2010, in 2011, he was interior minister and he became attorney general. Even before he became interior minister, he was advisor to the president. So he should be privy to some of the negotiations and some of the dealings that went on when it comes to the purchase of these aircraft. I'm going to bring those 2 thoughts straight to Mr. Okujeto Ablakwa with us in studio. First of all, is it Mr. Mahama? Is he government official 1?
I must say that I have a lot of respect for Suleiman Abrahama. I've known him since our days in Legon and the work he does for the Media Foundation for West Africa. And I know that he's a trainer of journalists, having himself worked as a journalist with the Chronicle newspaper for many, many years. I am totally disappointed. Absolutely disappointed. This is not what he teaches his journalist class or his journalism students. All of what Suleiman Abrahama has done is to engage in speculation, conjecture, hypothesizing, guesswork, postulation, gamble, suspicion, presumption, rely on hunches. That's all he's done. What happened to the time-tested journalistic ethos of verifying, going to the source, seeking confirmation? If Suleiman Abrahama was telling us this morning that he has spoken to credible sources at the UK SFO, he probably filed a right to information request, and he has a source which, even if he doesn't want to disclose, fine, journalists are allowed not to disclose their source. But look, if you look at the gravity of this matter, you will expect that you have some authority giving him information. Then we would be taking his analysis serious. But all he's done is to engage in guesswork, which he tells journalists, young journalists in his journalism class, not to engage in. So I'm really disappointed. Look, Mr. Mahama is a citizen like all of us. He can decide to take serious action, serious legal action against what Mr. Brahma has done. And I mean, I love Joy FM. I'm always happy to be here. But you have to be careful, because you can also be held liable in any legal action. His Excellency, the former president, I know will speak at a point on this matter. But we should be extremely, extremely careful to respect his rights and to desist from engaging in these wild, speculative vituperations. That is all what we engage in. Look, elected government official 1 can be anybody. Members of parliament who become ministers of state, as our constitution allows, can be elected government official, because they can become defense ministers who will be key in taking decisions.
But we know who this defense minister was, and it was Lieutenant General Henry Smith. He was not elected. He was not a member of parliament.
If you read the statement of facts, there were 2 campaigns, one spanning 2009 to 2011, another 2013 to 2015.
But again, the statement of fact,
the second campaign. So you didn't have only one defense minister during that period.
But you have only one government official 1, because it's a factual point. I just want to make this factual clarification. You have only one government official 1 running through the documents, and he took office in 2009, and he's the one who saw through this procurement. So it must have been the one who was an official in 2009.
If you read the United States documents from the DC court, paragraph 136, let me read it to you. It says, in connection with the sales to Ghana, beginning on or about January 1, 2009, the Defense and Space Division Spanish subsidiary contracted with individual one's brother, consultant 4, a citizen of Ghana and the United Kingdom, to act as a third-party consultant for Airbus during the C295 sales campaigns. January 1, 2009. Who had the NDC been sworn in?
But there was
the NDC came to power January 7, 2009. That's when we were sworn in. So January 1, 2009, who was the elected government official? Individual one that is being referred to. Who was that? So you see,
Mr.
It's a reason why we ought to be very, very careful.
Mr.
The election was in 2008.
Yes, this point actually narrows it down even further, because at that time there wasn't even a defense or interior minister. The only people who told
you there was no defense or interior minister? Who told you that?
I'm talking about the defense and interior
President
minister.
Kufuor didn't have defense and interior minister.
If I may finish, I'm talking about the defense and interior minister who ran through 2009, who were government officials in 2009, 2010, and
January 6th, there was a defense minister in this country.
Let me give a typical example.
There was an interior minister.
Let me just give a typical example. When the Airbus officials started coming to Ghana to negotiate with government official 1 and intermediary 5, those government officials must have been government officials, elected officials, as of January 1, 2009. And only only 2 people had been elected in January 1, 2009 who could have had a say in purchase of aircraft. That was the president and the vice president.
I am putting to you that by paragraph 136, by the facts, nobody could have had a say at that time. The NDC had not formed a government.
The Constitution stipulates. If I may.
So you see the difficulties you run into when you engage in speculations. I am saying that, look, we are all for investigations. Why do we want to prejudice the investigations? Why do we want to run ahead of ourselves and engage in tabloid yellow journalism and obfuscate issues and even indict people? We are refusing to respect their natural justice rights. We should not engage in that. Why the hurry? This is a matter. Look, I have read a statement from the UK SFO. They say investigations are ongoing. The UK SFO director himself says that investigations are ongoing. They have not concluded the investigation. So why the rush? Why the rush? If I can read that to you. Lisa Osofsky, director of the SFO, said, quote, Airbus paid bribes through agents around the world to stack the decks in its favor and win contracts around the globe. Corruption like this undermines free trade and fair development, and it is to Airbus's credit that it has admitted its culpability, cleaned its house, and come forward to put this conduct to bed. A resolution of this scope would not have been possible without the commitment, determination, and hard work of SFO staff and our French and American colleagues. We are also indebted to law enforcement partners around the world for the support they provided in securing this record-breaking resolution. The SFO investigation remains active, and the position in relation to individuals is being considered, unquote. That's what the SFO director has said. So let us be patient. Let's take our time.
Okay.
I would have been prouder. I mean, I have told you that I have enormous respect for my good friend Suleiman Abraham. If he had made contacts as a respected journalist within the African region, who's well regarded, and he's put out credible, verifiable, accounts of his journalistic work, that now I can narrow down, or I can say that it is this person. But when you engage in all of this guesswork and presumptions and rely on hunches and conjecture, just speculating, you don't help us in any way. You don't help us.
Mr. Brima has rejoined us on the line. Let's quickly he would like to make a response to what you're saying now. So let's hear him. Mr. Suleiman Brima, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Daniel.
I mean, thanks for rejoining us. So your response to Mr. Blakwa, which you wanted to make?
Well, I would say that I'm not surprised about the position that Honorable Kudutu Blakwa has taken. I think that given the nature of the matter, he would love us to engage in semantics And so that when you hear that the court said on or about January 1, he would want us to take it to mean January 1 when the NDC was not in power. When he talks about the foreign countries, the advanced countries, when they have these settlements, they need to find a way of compensating developing countries who are victims of it, even though we make ourselves victims by our people who are in government. I think that he would love for us to have such conversation. I'm surprised that he is taking what I've said to be speculation, conjecturing, and so on and so forth. Look, the court documents are not documents of perception. They are not documents of assumption. They are not documents of speculation. These are court documents. These are factual documents. And they have made allusions to, individuals who have not been named. As journalists are allowed to analyze the data and point out the big trends that are happening. I think that Ghanaian journalists, what they have to do is to interpret the court documents and analyze it as I have done, to say that, look, this is where, the whole thing is pointing to. And of course, as I said, look, I haven't said in my write-up and in everything that I've said that therefore President Mahama was the person who received bribe money. I haven't said that. We are talking about who possibly is government official one. And the court document gives certain indicators. The person was in office 2009 through to 2015, was a key decision maker in the procurement of aircraft for our military. And I've done the analysis for you in terms of who possibly could have been an elected government official. Honorable Ablaka wants us to believe that as Deputy Minister for Education, he could have been described as an elected government official. He was an elected MP. He was not an elected deputy minister. He got to be deputy minister not by election, but by appointment. So under that circumstance, we cannot say that he was an elected government official.
But he was a government official who was elected, no?
Yeah, he was a government official, but an elected MP. Why? Is it all MPs who are elected who get to be members of parliament? I mean, who gets to be ministers or deputy ministers? It is no. But let's even assume, as I said, that those who became defense ministers, as he is trying to allude to, those who became defense ministers and were elected as MPs, let us assume that the document, when it says elected government official, it could also mean a minister who is also an MP and therefore elected. But I've done the analysis for you. In terms of those who were, defense ministers, Henry Smith was not an elected government official, even if we take it to mean that those who go to parliament could be described as elected government officials if they happen to be ministers. And I've said the next person, Honorable Kumbo, yes, was elected an MP, but he became a Minister of Defense not in 2009. And therefore, if the transaction had started in 2009, could he have been the person that we are talking about as government official, one who was influential in making that decision? So if we have somebody who served as an elected government official, elected by our constitution, elected, and the person was there from 2009 to 2015, the person was at being a vice president, was the chairman of the Armed Forces Council. As president, was commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. Then you say that, look, if you analyze the document this way, it amounts to conjecture, speculation, and so on and so forth. Fortunately, the person is there. Let him come, and he says that the former president will speak at some point. That is great, as I said. Let us hear him. Okay. And let us say that, hear him say, look, it cannot be, President Mahama or Mahama being referred to as government official one. And then we can continue with the debate. I like the point he made earlier that we need to fight corruption and move beyond the MPP-NDC debate. But the fact is, what he is doing is basically the MPP-NDC debate once again. Once the point is, the nail is being hit, and then it is something that affects perhaps the interest that he serves or the party that he belongs to, then he thinks it's going into a different direction. But the point is, that is what we have to do if we have to move beyond the MPP-NDC debate. Look, let me tell you, If this thing had been that, procurement happened under the MPP regime and government official one under the MPP, look, the tone we are hearing from NDC today would have been what we are hearing from MPP. And what we are hearing from MPP is what we would have been hearing from the NDC. And I think as a country, we need to move beyond that. And we need to be straightforward with ourselves, not to play with words and do semantics and so on and so forth as he would love us to do. I wouldn't do that.
Mr. Brima, thank you very, very much for joining us with those comments. So, a number of quick corrections that we must make. The Constitution as amended 31st December 1996 states in Article 211, it says Article 211 of the Constitution is amended by repeal of paragraph A and the insertion of the following paragraph, that the Armed Forces Council shall have a chairman who shall be the president or his nominee. By convention, it is usually the vice president. But then again, so this key individual could have been the chairman as of the time that the NDC took power. Also, my attention has been drawn to the fact that in paragraph 136 of the District Court of Colombia's documents, it says, in connection with sales to Ghana, beginning on or about January 1, 2009. So that means that it doesn't necessarily mean January 1, 2009 exactly. And often lawyers use this expression when they are not exactly sure of the date that they are speaking of. So we can't say for a fact that this happened on, January 1, 2009.
Exactly. I mean, that is trite knowledge. Exactly the point I'm making.
Yes, so
the point I'm
when
making.
we are talking about the government who was government official in January 1, 2000, we can't hold ourselves to that date specifically, Mr.
Of course we cannot. I haven't done that. Haven't done that. And it's the same way that you cannot force me to come along with you for January 7.
Come along with Daniel Dazi.
Or those who are arguing.
Okay.
Let me not pick on you. Those who are arguing that let us start from January 7. The same way that it will not be fair for me to insist that on or about is January 1st.
Okay.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
That must apply. So that those who are arguing that on or about should take off from January 7.
Okay.
It must apply to them as well. You understand?
Okay.
So I'm saying that, look, why the rush? Look, the court in Southwark said that
they're still looking into this.
They were concerned about the codes they have used for the persons involved, their natural rights, because they have not been heard, they have not been contacted, they did not even know that these matters were being investigated.
Okay.
So the court said that, look, they were going to be very cautious to respect the rights of these persons because of the implications. They know. And then we come here in Ghana, sit on radio, and we want to. I'm saying that it doesn't help. You see, that's why I made a point at the beginning that, look, this should not be about MPP and DC. Let's not get petty. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let us allow investigation to continue. If anybody wants to add anything new beyond the documents we all have, the judgments and the statement of facts, that person, like a journalist who are privileged, who are in a privileged position, who can have access, who can write for further information, should do that. If my good friend Suleiman Abraham had done his basic journalism work by contacting the UKSFO or any of the authorities there to provide further and better particulars beyond what is here, and that is what he's putting out, then I can go along with him. But when even in the judgment we are told that, look, we must be careful about the persons who have been have been coded. They have not told us who they are. Then we engage in this reckless conduct which Yabuabi and Samoa engaged in yesterday, calling out President Mahama and declaring him unfit for office and all of that. I mean, Jesus Christ. Are we in some banana republic, some jungle? Is this what we want to do? What did the MPP say when in the announced documentary in number 12, you had Mr. Kwesi Nyantechi make all kinds of claims about knowing the president's hotel room, knowing how to locate the president, and how monies will be transferred to the president directly? Didn't we hear the MPP say that, look, I mean, he did not have any authority to speak that way and that he was just influence peddling? I did not engage in that kind of, cheap politicization and say that once Mr. Nyantechi said that, then the president stands indicted. I said that, look, I welcome investigations. I have been asking him for updates, that where is the investigative report on that matter. So, look, I mean, Abaye and Nwane the Boba, let us be consistent in this country and let's stop the hypocrisy.
So Mr. Ablakwa, for the sake of, because we all know the period that we are in, to make the matters clear, and this is the question I asked earlier, as far as you know, you were Deputy Minister, Member of Parliament, key member of the party. Is Mr. Mahama government official one?
So far as I'm concerned, he is not. He is not. I mean, I know for a fact that President Mahama has always conducted himself above board. If you look at some of the facts in the deposition, it is really surprising that a government official one will be meeting these people and
who is government official one
and all of that. We need to know. We need to know. I don't have a hunch, and I don't want to engage, in speculative work, in postulations, in engaging in suspicion and all of that. I would rather have better things to do with my time and my thought processes. I would rather that we all engage with the relevant authorities, and we should give all the support that Martin Amidu needs to investigate this matter. People have raised concerns. Suleiman Abraham has said that about
he could be in a position of conflict
of interest and all of that. That is a genuine concern. But I'll say that, look, let's be willing to gloss over it. This is somebody who, even when he was in government, has shown that he can be independent as is expected of the Attorney General. So I will not, looking at his own track record, put too much weight. If it was somebody else who has shown that he just cannot be independent, then I will go along.
But because of the character of Martin Amidu,
because of the character and the track record that he has shown, I am willing that he be given the benefit of the doubt to conduct this investigation. But we need the investigation carried out, and it should be thorough. And you see, we should not also be selective. There are so many issues, very important issues.
Right, that point has been made, Mr. Ablakwa. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, the Airbus scandal is far from over. The saga that we have been discussing, we all know it's far from over. And we have more exclusive details we will be bringing to you. We are doing a lot of digging ourselves, both here and abroad. And we will have...
It's not the
Mr. Ablakwa, we've not
analysis.
We've not known each other for long, but I don't work like that.
I trust you.
Good. And okay, but having heard from our speakers this morning, Vitus Azim has spoken, Okujetu Ablakwa has spoken, Suleiman Abraham has spoken. What are your expectations? Call us and have your say right after these messages. The number is 0302 216 541. 0244 340 437. We'll be back to take your comments. Hello.